Well, good morning. I'm Tim Betcher, one of the owners of True Pump and Equipment, your pond store. And today's virtual seminar, we're going to talk about pond treatments, water treatments. Some people call them chemicals. We don't like to say chemicals because a lot of what we do is more natural than that. So, but yeah, we kind of want to run through the variety of things. I've done a few of these outside, and today I'm inside just because I think the wall behind me is our water treatment wall. So we'll kind of even maybe point out a few of those things as we go along. I'll go ahead and share screen so we can kind of see as we're going through the outline. But the first part, we talk about the pond ecosystem. And so we get a lot of people that come in that just say, you know, my pond is green, I'm having trouble, what kind of chemicals can I throw in? Well, there's a lot more to it than that, and just dumping chemicals in isn't really the way to treat a pond. Normally we want to have proper filtration, all the key components of the pond ecosystem. So, you know, that's filtration, that's the rocks and gravel, that's the fish and plants, the pump circulation system. All those things that go into it are very important for the system to work right, so that then the water treatments can add to that and keep things clear, but you're not just depending on them, if that makes sense. So, so just really important you look at the whole system. When people walk in, we don't just start handing them bottles of stuff and start dumping stuff in. We want to look at the whole system and see what they have going. So let's kind of run down some of the basics. Like I said, I've got, you know, again, I've got the wall behind me, and a lot of people come in and it's like, wow, all this stuff kind of looks the same. How come you have so many things? Well, there's certain categories, and a lot of stuff fits into just a few categories, and then it just may be a little more specific and do a little bit different things. So start out talking about the automatic dosing system. And the reason we do that is just because even though we tell everybody you want to put your water treatments in once a week, it's easy to forget. And over time, it's really hard to catch up once things kind of get out of whack. So the nice thing about the automatic dosing system is it's a little item. Let me grab it. The automatic dosing system is basically just a container with a bag of water treatments in it, and then a little pump that pumps into your pond. The nice thing about it too is when you're doing your water treatments, a lot of times you're doing them once a week, and so you're putting in that dosage once a week, whereas the automatic dosing system puts in little micro doses just constantly throughout every day. So rather than doing a bunch and then none and a bunch, this is putting just a little bit all the time, and then you can kind of set it and leave it and let it put the water treatments in. So the different treatments that are available for ponds, there's Maintain, which is primarily your normal bag that you would use. Primarily, it's a bacteria product, but it does have some other helpful things with it too. If you're having some trouble with some green water or things aren't quite looking right, you need a little extra string algae or whatever, then the Clean would be the bag we would go to. If we've got some off-colored water, maybe due to some rains or some mulch or whatever, tannins in the water, sometimes we'll use the Clear. And then the other one is the Protect, and that is for if you're having some issues with some fish. The Protect helps to build their slime coat, and it helps with fish health. So the Maintain is the normal one that we would use. The Clean, Clear, and Protect are more when things happen. Let's switch to a different bag for a while, and then we switch back. There's also the dosing systems for fountains. Even though we're talking primarily about ponds today, we want to talk water treatments for other things like fountains, which could be pondless waterfalls, or other little types of things where we don't actually have a pond itself. The main one that comes with the fountains is the Prevent, which is primarily kind of an algaecide to help take care of string algae. But there's also Clean, which a lot of people use the Clean to start the season and kind of get things going. So the primary water treatment that we would use in a pond is beneficial bacteria. And bacteria sounds like a bad thing. Some people think, oh, I don't want bacteria in my pond. But in this case, it's beneficial bacteria. It's good for us. It's good for the pond. And what that's going to do is it breaks down the nutrients that are in the pond. Algae is a plant, just like any other plant. It needs nutrients to grow. So if we can minimize the nutrient load, then we're going to be able to keep that water clear, keep the pond clear. Like we talked about in the plant class, you know, plants need nutrients to grow. They're pulling up the nutrients and they're helping that nutrient load get low. The beneficial bacteria also breaks down the nutrients to help keep your water clear. So good thing to remember too, beneficial bacteria is for clear water, okay? We could put it in, it's not gonna help with the string algae. The two algae are kind of different animals, and so they take two different treatments normally to take care of them. Just adding bacteria will help keep your water clear, but it may not keep your string algae down. So, and quite a few, as you can see, we've got listed there, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kinds of bacteria. Again, there's kind of your basics, and then there's stuff for specific situations. So we have dry or liquid. If you have a pond that normally stays clear, not really a problem. The dry works certainly quite well. It's a little bit cheaper too. The biggest thing about dry is it takes about a week for those little bugs that are in there to wake up and actually start breaking down nutrients. Whereas if the liquid bacteria, those little bugs are active in about 24 hours. So the liquid's a little more active, acts quicker. If you're having a problem pond, green water, things like that, a lot of times we'll go straight to the liquid. Otherwise, normal maintenance going along, dry works pretty well. And like I said, it's a little bit cheaper. Pond starter bacteria has a few more strains of bacteria in, so it's really, especially if you clean out all your filters and get your pond, have a pond clean out maybe to start the year, pond starter is a good way to get going. You're trying to get that bacteria seeded in those biofalls, in the rocks and gravel in the bottom of the pond. So that pond starter has those extra strains that can really help to get that your bacteria count kicked off or raised up and kicked off to start the season to make sure. Especially too, sometimes it's hard as the season begins because the plants aren't really growing. They're not really taking up many nutrients. And so we're adding that pond starter to kind of supercharge things until the plants get going too, which now, like now for most people, we've had this warm spell. I know here our lilies are up to the top finally, and the plants are really going now and doing the job that they do. The other one is cold water. And a lot of times that would be what you would start the season with. When the water temperature is below 50 degrees, and remember water temperature, not air temperature, when water temperature stays below 50 degrees, you don't need to add bacteria. It's really, you can add if you want to, but it's really pointless because it's not warm enough for the bacteria to grow and propagate. So the cold water is normally what you would start with. When you hit that 50-degree mark, 50 to 60 degrees, the cold water works well. And then you could use it at the end of the season too, you know, just as the season's winding down, the water's a little colder, those different strains of bacteria in the cold water help with that. The other one we have that's real popular too is the Sludge Cleaner and the Muck Off. If you get that buildup, and again, this isn't really for string algae, this is more for that black muck cruddy stuff in the bottom. Sludge, muck, whatever you want to call it, but it's more that black, slimy, stinky stuff than it is just like debris or green string algae. That's not what we're talking about. This is different, but a few different things to take care of that. We have the liquid sludge cleaner. The one thing about that is you really have to have water temperatures consistently over 60 degrees to make that work. So the sludge cleaner works well, but again, it needs to be a little warmer. It's not normally a beginning of the season kind of thing. They also now have sludge cleaner little water soluble packets. So you just got a little packet, bing, you throw it in, you're on your way. That's helping to do its part. We have one other product called Muck Off, which is still, again, these are all under the bacteria subheading, but Muck Off is basically a bacteria in a tablet form. You toss those in, they help to kind of clear areas of sludge and stuff. And then you come back in another week or two, and I'm going to throw some of those tablets in those spots that I missed, and try and clean the whole bottom of the pond and get rid of all that sludge and stuff. So hopefully that makes sense. Any questions, Giuliano, as we go through the bacteria section?
Well, I assume that this is all fish safe, right? If you have fish and plants in the pond.
That's a great question. Absolutely, it is. And we'll make sure and hit on that because some of the string algae stuff is fish safe, but you just have to be a little more careful. But everything in the bacteria, you really cannot put too much bacteria in. bacteria occurs naturally in the pond, but the problem is so your natural bacteria occurs. At first, say you have a high nutrient load, you got a bunch of crud in the bottom, so the bacteria ramps up, eats all those nutrients, and then there's no food left, so the bacteria counts go way down, and then you get green water, and then the bacteria. So rather than have that cycle, we're just kind of evening out the curve by adding that bacteria. But again, yeah, you can. In fact, sometimes when people have a green pond, we'll say use the liquid, use it every day until you get that thing clear. So yeah, fish safe for sure. The other one, I think, overall, when we talk to customers, I think more people fight string algae than they do green water. Again, green water is caused by too many nutrients, which can be a lot of crud down in the bottom of the pond. Too many fish is a good one too. If you have too many fish, that fish waste can feed the algae cycle, end up with green water. But I think more people probably fight string algae than they actually do the green water side of things. So we've got a number of things to take care of string algae. Just like with bacteria, we talked about the dosing system, which is easy because you kind of set it, forget about it, let it go. The ion gen is the same thing. It's basically a control panel with a copper probe. It puts copper into the water. The copper breaks down the cells of the string algae and helps to eliminate the string algae. Plus, you can kind of dial it in. The keypad is 1 to 10, so you can say, I don't have much algae. I'll start at 1. Oh, it's starting to grow a little bit. I'll crank it up to 2, back down, and so you can adjust it to put that in there. But it's a little bit more. I mean, takes a little bit more work than the dosing system, but because you do want to adjust it, but does a great job. The one thing is, it is certainly a little more expensive. It's almost $400, $379 for the ion gen, and then the probe has to be replaced every year or two, and that's like $140. So those two items, it's a little more expensive, but it's also makes controlling your string algae easier, and especially on a big pond, it becomes more cost effective. On a real small pond, not quite as much, but on a big pond, if you're putting a lot of Algaecide in, the ion gen can be, actually maybe end up saving you money. So but the biggest thing is with the ion gen is, again, talking about fish safe. Fish actually don't like, it's not good for fish to have copper in the water, and here we are adding copper. Well, as long as we have string algae to absorb the copper, it's going to go to the string algae rather than to the fish. So the ion gen is not to be run in the winter because there's no string algae to absorb it. So you would not even turn it on. I don't think we even put ours in until probably the 1st of May into our pond until you start seeing some string algae on the rocks. Then you can go put the ion gen in. And again, if you have fish, you always want to run it at your lowest setting possible. I think ours is running at 2 or 3 right now. So we still got it pretty low. It's early in the season. Maybe you have to go up a little higher. And again, if you don't have fish and you don't want to affect the green anywhere, crank it all the way up if you want to, but then your probe's going to go faster too, the higher you have it. The higher you have it set. The most common string algae control, though, is the liquid algaecide. We recommend that as kind of your weekly maintenance product. Aquascape has an algaecide. We have the Profix, which is really popular with people. But either one of those, you recommended to add that once a week. And that's going to help to control that string algae. Like I said before, it's always easier to stay ahead than try and catch up. So adding that algaecide on a regular basis, we've even got a lot of people that started adding it throughout the winter. They maybe only ever do it every 2 or 3 weeks in the winter, not weekly, but they continue to add it through the winter because that way, once you start that spring cycle, rather than have the string algae have a bloom and try and get it out and do all that, if you keep going year round, it kind of keeps that concentration a little higher and helps to keep the string algae under control. You don't have a big bloom to start the season. So the other thing we do recommend, the algaecide can kind of counteract the effects of the bacteria, so we would recommend adding those on different times of the week. So maybe Saturday is bacteria day and Wednesday is algaecide day or whatever. But you want to kind of offset those a little bit, not do them on the same day. So the liquid algaecide is kind of our maintenance product, just like our regular bacteria. That's a normal thing you add weekly. Ecoblast is more of a spot treatment kind of thing. So say my waterfall is real green and the algaecide's not taking care of it. Ecoblast is a powdered algaecide. So what it comes into contact with, it will kill and break up. So a lot of times people use it more in streams and stuff. And part of the reason that you get it worse in streams, the water's a little shallower, it warms up more, it gets heated up with the sun, so you get a little more string algae there. So with the Ecoblast, applying that, you just turn the pond off or turn the waterfall off, sprinkle that Ecoblast on there, let it sit for 20 minutes or so. It'll kind of work its magic and work in there, break that stuff up. When you turn the pump on, a lot of that's going to end up, you want to clean out your skimmer because some of that green is going to get washed off those rocks and pushed in to the skimmer. And the biggest thing as far as fish safety of these of the algaecides is just sticking to the recommended dosage. Like our most popular one, Profix, is 1 ounce per 600 gallons. So as long as you stick to that, you're going to be fine with fish. It's not really toxic to fish. What it does is it uses up a lot of the oxygen. It's an oxidizer, so it uses up the oxygen in the pond. So another thing about Algaecide, it's not a bad idea to go ahead and add that in the morning when the pond is cooler and the water's cooler because it holds more oxygen. If you do it in the middle of the day, look, when the water's at its warmest, it has the least amount of oxygen, you're going to use up some of that oxygen. So just another thing with that. So it's not really poisonous. It's more that oxidation of what it does. Some of those bottles too, the Algaecide and the Ecoblast, are a little scary when you read them, but it's more like, well, yeah, if I drink out of the bottle, if my dog drank out of the bottle, it's going to be toxic. Once I put that 1 ounce in 600 gallons, it's pretty inert and it's so diluted. Okay for birds, dogs, fish, everything else. So again, just sticking to the recommended dosage. Another one that some people have had good success with is SAB, which is Stringy Algae Buster, was Aquascape's name for that. And again, it's just another kind of tool in the toolkit. Maybe for whatever reason, the Algaecide's not quite working as well for you. Let's try the SAB just for something different. Kind of focuses. It has a phosphate binder on it. In it, and so it kind of helps to come at it from a different direction. Some people that say I want to do only the natural way, we'll use barley straw, or we have the liquid barley here. Biggest thing about that, it does work over time. Again, it is a little more natural, like, you know, big ponds, sometimes they'll throw a whole bale of barley in there to help control string algae. What it does really is it breaks down over time. Secretes kind of a natural peroxide that helps to break down the string algae. So the biggest thing about barley, though, why it's not quite as popular, it takes longer to work. You may have to add it for 3 or 4 weeks before you see results in the pond. Whereas in Algaecide, usually more in a week, you know, you're going to start seeing results. So that's a big, again, a little more natural, but it takes longer to take effect. So, and then some of the other kind of, like I said, we've got a whole wall of stuff behind me, but some of the other things that we use on a regular basis, the pond gummies, again, are actually, I could have put those under the bacteria product too, but they're like a little cup, look like a little pudding cup, and you just dump the whole thing in. When you've got just a pond that's just a train wreck that's green and crappy and all kinds of stuff going on, rather than just pump it out, you can always try and throw the pond gummy in, and it's like supercharged bacteria. You throw it in there, it actually sometimes gets worse for like 24 hours, and then all of a sudden, bang, you got a clear pond. So that's always something to try, relatively inexpensive. It's, you know, one treatment for $9 or $10 or whatever it is, and you toss that whole thing in there, and that can really help to clear a cruddy pond. Detoxifier is a really important one. I mean, at least there's dechlorinator too. We use detoxifier, and the biggest reason for the detoxifier, it does some more things than just neutralize chlorine. So chlorine is toxic to fish. The most fish kills we see is because people leave a hose on and forget about it, and all that chlorine goes into the pond. So the detoxifier helps to neutralize that chlorine. It also neutralizes heavy metals and ammonia, which ammonia is, even in small amounts, can be toxic to fish. So detoxifier, anytime you add water, great idea just to go ahead and put some detoxifier in. And you're, you know, it's a pump system like so many of the Aquascape products, 1 pump per 100 gallons for the smaller sizes, which makes it real simple once you figure out how big your pond is, how many squirts do I need to put in there. But you have to remember with the detoxifier, if I have a 1,000-gallon pond, I'm not adding 1,000 gallons every week, you know. So when I add my water, maybe I'm adding 100 gallons. okay, I'm going to put one pump in for that 100 gallons I just added, and then the next week I'll do it again. So some people have an automatic fill valve, so the water's going in all the time. So in that case, it's not a bad idea to still put the detox in once a week, just to kind of neutralize that chlorine that has come in. The other part of it too, it's not just chlorine. A lot of municipalities use chloramines too, which really you really need to get those out of there because they will build up over time. Chlorine will gas off just with the waterfalls, but the chloramines will not. So important to be adding that detoxifier on a regular basis for your fish health. If you don't have fish, you don't have to worry about it. Carbon is another one kind of similar to the clear product that goes in the dosing system. The other thing is too, I forgot to mention that the products that are in the dosing system are also available in the pump top bottle. So if you want to just get the maintain and not get it in the dosing system bag, you can buy maintain and squirt it in. Or if I'm having problems with water clarity, I can buy a bottle of the clear and I can put the number of squirts in that I need to with the clear. But carbon is similar to what the clear does. It's designed to take colors out or off-colored water and improve that. So carbon is something, you know about carbon, it basically absorbs things. And so what it's doing is absorbing that color over time. The one thing about carbon, sometimes we like the clear better, it just acts quicker. The carbon, it can take weeks before you notice a difference. But if you get that tea-colored water, off-colored water, carbon will help. Green water, that's bacteria, not carbon to take care of that. Another one we use quite regularly is called Flocculant. And basically what Flocculant does, it's for suspended debris. Not for green water, not for string algae, but I've actually a big rain and I've got some dirt in there or whatever, but I've got suspended debris that's not really algae that I need to get out of my pond. So what the Flocculant does, it's kind of like a binder. It makes that stuff glom together and then it gets caught. It either drops to the bottom or it gets caught in your skimmer. We actually have like a filter pad that works in conjunction with that. You put the fine filter pad in the skimmer, add flocculant, your stuff gloms together. It ends up, rather than being in suspension when it's so tiny, when it gloms together, you can actually trap it in this filter pad and just use it temporarily until your pond clears up, and then you toss the pad out. So that's the flocculant's also real important that you do the right dosage. If you use too much, it actually can change the charge of the particles and they don't glom together. They just go into suspension like forever. So we had people use too much and then they end up having to drain their pond because they just cannot get it clear. So real important you follow the right dosage there. And then another one is Defolmer. Certain times people get foam in the pond. Sometimes Algaecide will create a little foam. But I mean, we're talking like when you really get foam on the surface and stuff. Sometimes, normally it's caused by kind of excess protein, and sometimes that can be after a heavy rain. So we have a defoam product. Normally it's going to take a few treatments to come in, but it's one of those things you kind of, oh, I've got foam. It's not really hurting anything, but it's a little unsightly. So I'll add this. Probably after a day or two, it'll pop back up. I add it again. After a few more treatments, it'll go away, and you won't have to worry about it. And then one other thing, not a huge fan of it, but it's certainly out there and used, is pond dye. And I'm okay, at least some of the more like black or really dark blue ones, not the tidy bowl blue one. But the advantage of using pond dye is it helps to reflect the sunlight. So of course, sunlight is going to cause, as sunlight in your pond is going to can cause algae to grow. If you reflect all that sunlight out, you're going to have less algae. But personally, for me, I'd rather have clear water where I can see my fish and stuff and maybe have a little green on the rocks than have black that I can't see through, or tinted water that I can't see through. Plus, the pond dye does not go away. I mean, you put that in, your rocks are going to be stained and probably continue to be that color for a very, very long time. It certainly has its uses though. Like if you go to Botanic Gardens to look at some of the pond stuff there, they use kind of that black pond dye, but part of the reason there is they're trying to set off their plants, because when you use that black, instead of looking down to the bottom, those plants, the lilies and stuff at the surface just pop, when you have that contrast with the black or the tinted water. So that's kind of where pond dye comes in. Again, certainly not the first thing we would go to. We carry a little bit of it, but don't sell a lot of it. So kind of went through that quick, kept moving along. Juliana, any questions or stuff I missed or that wasn't clear?
Yeah, I have two questions. So when I was getting all the supplies for setting up my pond, it's new this year. I got a bottle of the Profix, and I'm actually not clear on what it's for, because if I'm reading the label, it doesn't say anything about algae, but it says it's to make the pond clear. So if you could clarify, no pun intended.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely a great question. So I should have mentioned that before. Just kind of passed over it. It's really the EPA is strict about what you can say things do. So if on the bottle you say this kills algae, then that product has to be EPA registered, which of course is a long process and costs a lot of money. So a lot of times when you pick up pond products, they're really vague. It's like clear suspended debris and clarifies water and things like just what you're talking about. You read it, and there's not very many. Now the Ecoblast is actually a EPA registered product, so it says kills algae on it, but like Profix does not. But it is a string algae product. That it is an algaecide, and it is designed to control string algae. So again, like you said, yeah, sometimes it's a little vague on the bottle, but that's definitely if you see clear debris, that kind of thing, normally that's an algaecide. If it says clarifier, that's normally a bacteria product.
Okay, so and for my pond, I need about 7 pumps. I know it's an 800-gallon pond. So you mentioned that it's probably better to do 1 pump a day rather than the 7 once a week.
Well, the dosing system does it that way. I mean, I guess if you want to take the time to do that, it might be a little better. I can tell you the vast majority of our customers they do it all once, 1 day of the week. I suppose 1 per day would be, I don't know if you noticed the difference. You might. Kind of an experiment. You could always try it. I would think just like the theory behind the dosing system, it probably would work a little better. But like I said to you, most people, if you have a pretty well balanced pond, usually green water is not the issue, normally, as long as you keep up with the bacteria. So good question. Yeah.
All right. And then one final question. I got the Ion Gen. I have not installed it yet because I don't have any string algae problems so far. But if I need to install it, is it okay to just put the probe inside the skimmer, or is it better to have the inline setup?
Great question. Absolutely. I think it's probably a little more efficient if you use it in the inline in the T method. But then you have to plug that and take that out in the off season for the winter and stuff. So probably 95% of our customers just drop it in the skimmer. As long as you have good water flow past those probes, you don't want it sitting in the corner where there's no water moving past them. But if you have good water flow past those probes, it'll do great having it in the skimmer. And it's a lot easier to do it that way. And the other part of that point too is the Ion Gen and the Algaecide do the same thing. So once you turn that Ion Gen on and throw it in, you don't have to add your Profix anymore or your Algaecide. You set that aside and just use the Ion Gen as your string algae control.
Got it. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me this morning. I hope everybody that watches this later enjoys the presentation. Please email or call us if you have any questions, or stop by the store and we'd be glad to help you out. And thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Giuliano.